We're going to be joined by Sarah McVittie, founder of Dressipi, and Matthew Horn, GM of Customer and Digital at Country Road Group. Country Road is a very large group in Australia, for those of you who don't know, who will be discussing Rethinking Personalisation, Transforming Retail in the 21st Century. Sarah and Matt have pre-recorded their conversation for us. And after this, Sarah's going to actually be joining us for post-presentation Q&A. So if you have any questions for Sarah, just put them in the comments section. And with that, Miss Brooke, please, can you bring up?
So hi, everyone. We're here to talk about personalization and how we think you should change the way that we think about it. My name's Sarah McVittie, and I'm the co-founder of a company called Dressipi, and we build predictive AI for fashion retailers. And I'm here with Matt Horn.
Hi guys, great to be here. My name is Matt Horn, as Sarah said, Group GM of Customer Digital at the Country Road Group, which is a large specialty fashion retailer within the Australasian market.
And we've been working together for a number of years, and I think we wanted to have a conversation really around the importance of personalization and what it actually means. And it's not, I suppose, how you probably think about it today. So it kind of used correctly, it really can transform everything from your buying and merchandising through to your customer experience. It's really wanting to have a very different conversation about how it can impact that. So really it's about understanding that it's not an option not to take this on, because retailers will not survive without it. And I think what we're seeing is that the world of retail is increasingly complex. It's very fragmented, and we all know that customers are becoming more and more fickle. So to really thrive and deliver for our customers, we have to understand their intent in the moment. We have to understand their goals, their missions, their behaviors, their emotions. We have to understand them at a very personal level. And then we need to act on that data, both in real time and in terms of how we deliver the right products for them, making sure that we make them the best possible version of themselves, however that may be, but also we make ourselves as retailers the best possible version of a business. And I suppose it's using that personal intelligence, and that's what we believe the essence is, because if you can do it well, it is transformational in terms of profit, in terms of revenue, in terms of loyalty, and that's what we really want to talk about today.
Yeah, I agree. And if I can jump in there as well, Sarah, like, to say it's survival, not a luxury, might seem provocative, but I think one thing that's always been true, but something that's shifted over the last 5 to 10 years is, consumers don't have different expectations of what good looks like in terms of service based on whether they're shopping in this sector or that sector. But what is changing pretty profoundly over the last little while is that actually the technical capability of people in non-adjacent sectors is becoming really pronounced. And understandably, that's sort of setting new standards for what consumers expect of more traditional retailers. And I think it's, from that perspective, it sort of changes the calculus of, like, you're not being benchmarked against your direct competitors. You're being benchmarked in terms of what good looks like in someone that's 2 or 3 categories over that you don't even think about as a business. And then I think the other thing that I think is pressing here is, we arguably exist in a sector where we maybe were a little bit later than others to the party on some of this, but you can really see a massive shift in some of the really big players over the course of the last 5 to 10 years. And I think what's really interesting, but a watch point for us all, is that increasingly with their incredibly rapid journey of maturity when it comes to this space, not only are they positioning themselves to win on economies of scale, but they're really leveraging the enormous data that they're sitting on to just run this transformationally different business in terms of the efficiency with which it's able to execute. And so it becomes a bit of an economic existential crisis of sorts, I think, for the sector as a whole.
I couldn't agree more. Yeah, you wouldn't expect to, if you downloaded a fitness app, you wouldn't expect to see what everyone else sees. It's completely personalized in every way. I think that is absolutely true. And I think what's important, there's so much energy around the Gen AI piece, but understanding what it means for this domain, what it means for fashion specifically, because it is a very different area. And I think understanding what comes into play is important there as well.
Yeah, exactly. And I think sort of, we've had this conversation before, Sarah. Gen AI is such a tremendously impressive and exciting space in terms of the transformational capability, but some degree, like, is it distracting us from the bigger conversation we should have been having all along, which is like, what is the holistic application of some of the technology here for our business beyond very specific use cases and looking at it a bit bigger? And that's kind of, I guess, what we mean when we talk about personal intelligence in the context of the AI space. It's how do you bring it together to meaningfully and in an end-to-end fashion sort of start to change how your business operates and how it runs, versus the more traditional approach to personalization, which is often a bit nebulous in the way that businesses think about it. It's often defined as, the right message to the right customer at the right time, which is all good and well, but I'd argue still a bit of a vague statement. We can come back to that perhaps. But what's the point of sort of, to some degree, personalization is about creating seamlessness and, a sense of magic. But in the absence of magic actually existing, to do it well and to do it at scale and to touch every one of your customers with that sense of seamlessness and understanding, really to do it properly, I think you start to appreciate the upstream considerations that you need to start thinking about in terms of how you structure your business. So from that perspective, I think, it is increasingly something that you should, I think, zoom out on and sort of think about more holistically as to what it actually means for your business. And it sort of shows up very much in, a couple of consumer facing layers like experience and loyalty. And I think that's kind of where a lot of the energy is and a lot of the creativity focuses. But actually, if it's really to achieve the full potential of the tech, as I said, it's about those upstream and downstream applications. Like, how do you, for that moment of beauty that you create with a good moment of personalization or a great moment of personalization, what are all the things that have to happen before and what are all the things that have to happen afterwards to really create an end-to-end experience, rather than just creating that moment of personalization in that moment? Because if you tackle the topic of personalization in a disconnected or siloed kind of way, you're just going to create a disconnected experience. And so there might be moments of brilliance, but to what degree is that really meaningfully changing the customer experience for your business as a whole, I think. And so from that perspective, sorry, you go.
No, I was just going to say, and it's so true. And I think what it needs to be consistent. So it needs to, you can't have these silos of your customer experience, your B&M, all of this needs to be connected, and everybody needs to understand, like, what is the true demand for these pieces and who are the customers who are coming to buy that and why do they come and buy those things, and then feeding that back in so you can do more of the brilliant. And it's not in any way detracting from the creativity that's so important in fashion, but it's allowing that creativity to be informed for the better of the customers and making sure that it's delivering for the customers for that particular brand as well.
Yeah, exactly right. I agree more.
So let's move on to the next.
I think, it's the challenge, of course, though, is that the reason why not everyone's doing this well is that it's pretty bloody hard, is the honest truth. I think, when we talked about the retail world being fragmented and complex, that is absolutely true of the tech stack and data architecture, or, the state of the data of any omni-channel retailer. And so to some degree, there are some pretty profound legacy issues that have to be overcome, and undoing the bed we've made ourselves to some degree for the last decade or more when it comes to this kind of space. Yes, it's a very early chapter in sort of the maturity of personal intelligence, but I'd argue just as, the much more high profile products in Gen AI are just incredibly rapidly reaching maturity. I think the same is true of this space. So it's time to form a point of view if it's not early. But more importantly, I think it's about thinking about what do I need to do now to get to the point where I can actually harness that in that genuinely holistic and transformative way, because a lot is required, actually. I think in first instance, there needs to be sort of a bit of a sharper point of view about what does personalization actually mean for your business. I think a lot of people talk about it in very nebulous terms, but how does that show up as is relevant to your business? Because as unless you're a pure play, you're probably going to have to make trade-offs in your investment decisions when it comes to the tech required to bring this to life. The data piece just can't be underestimated. Like, building that capability within your org is a difficult thing to get going. It's then also thinking about what you need to do, sort of structure and scrub the data in a way that can actually be picked up and used meaningfully. But then also it's bigger than just a bunch of data scientists sort of sitting in a room. When you think about how much data actually is entered by humans, for instance, in the core systems of record, it's to some degree an end-to-end education that the journey that the organization has to go on to really harness this properly. And then, of course, I think thinking really critically about right partners is really important, because it's an incredibly crowded space, and as more noise and energy sort of exists around this space, surprise, surprise, it's just going to get more crowded, which will make it difficult for vendors. So I think, going slow to go fast in first instance is probably the right approach on a number of these dimensions, I think.
Right.
I think from that perspective, and I guess it's like, the question is, how do you eat an elephant, as I just described it, and it's kind of one bite at a time. As I said before, it's defining what personalization really means to your business, and I think it should be to the point where the team can actually describe that through a series of use cases and how those use cases will evolve across different horizons. So you're getting quite pointy about the experiences that you actually want to create for your customers. So then you can understand specifically, like, well, okay, that's what we want to do, and we want to do that at scale and for every customer. What are, as I said before, the upstream and downstream impacts that we need to, or changes we need to start thinking about for our business. The data one I also touched on. It's a new capability. It's a difficult thing to get going. But it's definitely something you can start to do now, whilst you're sort of surveying the field in terms of which vendors are right for you, but also as that technology really reaches maturity. I think part of that as well is probably building the level of data literacy within your organization, so that you can better understand the different models that different tech partners actually use to deliver their offering, so that you can start to critically assess them, as against what's right for your business. Because not every model and not every engine in this space is sort of built specifically for retail, or specifically for your version of retail. And that really matters at the end of the day, right? Because for us in fashion, for instance, a lot of the offerings that cut their teeth in Amazon style businesses are just not right for us, as I think Sarah will probably touch on in a few moments. And then I think it's about, really, it's not build it and they will come. I think it's build it and then continue to iterate and experiment to really learn how you hone it for your customer and your sector, but also, I guess, critically to build that story of value creation within the business and treat the question as like an ongoing process, rather than we're on a journey of personalization and one day we'll get there. Like, I think the truth is you never really do. It continues to evolve in terms of what it means for your business. So creating that culture of experimentation is pretty critical.
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting, the journey you have to go on, and it's one that we at Dressipi really believe in. And it's looking at, I suppose, if we just look quickly at what we've started to do with Country Road Group, and this is kind of obviously just the beginning, but we started very simply with the data. And I think, as Matt was saying, one of the most important things is having that data literacy, but also the data integrity. I think lots of retailers spend a lot of time on their customer data, but they often maybe don't appreciate as much that the product data, the thing the customer actually cares about, the product, is as important as the customer data. And I think one thing that we've learned at Dressipi is, if you can decompose the product into data points as a customer sees it, and put that customer and fashion lens onto those products, it means you can start to understand the customers in real time without any profile and their intent. It's so much better. So once you have decomposed and deconstructed every product, and you understand what those different components are, as customers are opening emails, interacting with sites in store, interacting with an app, you start to understand each customer's preferences at a very detailed level. So you'll understand that they love white shirts but hate white jeans. You'll understand that they wear this size here and that size there. So it's really building that understanding. So you don't need to build quizzes and those sorts of things. There's so much intelligence that comes from that, and having the integrity within the business that data is consistent, so that, with any of these AI models, it's only as good as the data going in, sort of garbage in, garbage out. So if you have consistency around that, and there's an example that we often give around necklines and women with large busts, but if you've got a crew neck, you can't see the collarbone. Round neck, you can. Scoop neck is lower. Women with large bust consistently, regardless of age, will return that crew neck, right? So that consistency and that integrity, and again, to Matt's point earlier, making sure that's understood throughout the business. And you've got all of these very analog parts of a fashion business that have all this data that needs to be digitized, and how do you start to streamline that and make it very digital first from the beginning? I think that's a really key thing that is important in this.
The other thing, just to quickly, Sarah, as well on that one is yeah, definitely a tough lesson in, garbage out when it comes to data. But when we went our journey with you, I think that really prompted us to sort of interrogate what our product data, as you touched on, really looked like. And we were kind of shocked by how sparse it actually is. And it sort of, once we realized that, and we've obviously been on a journey of product enrichment together, data enrichment, sorry, but I suspect a lot of vertically integrated retailers will be in a similar position. And then how do you sort of start to uncover those data problems in your business and start to solve them? Because if you only have really simple data sets, there's only so much magic or sophistication that even the very best of models can actually create for your customers.
Yeah, and I think the thing that we learn here as well is taking time to state the problem, and then once you understand the problem you're trying to solve, and understanding the data you need to solve that. And we work with really brilliant fashion stylists who work alongside our data science team, and it is a bit like Hogwarts. You've got two completely diametrically opposite brains, but it is amazing because it is an art, but there's also a science to it, and in most cases you can apply that science. Not in all cases, but in most cases you can do. And what we see when you've got that data is everything is better. All your models are better, all your predictions are better, because you have that consistency. And if you have the data and understand, as a customer sees it, suddenly you can see that that's why that top doesn't sell for that size, and that's why that dress does, and it all starts to make sense. So that's the first thing that I think getting your data house in order is really key. And then I think the second thing is that we just started very simply, and our vision is to end up with a journey which is completely personalized for every visitor. But the thing we started with was this testing, these real-time AI recommendations, whether it's showing outfits and showing multiple ways of wearing a product and similar items. And because you've got that product data, because you're responding to the intent, so you don't, even if someone's cleared their cookies, you can see after 2 or 3 clicks that it's not the color of the dress she's after, it's the occasion or the sleeve style or the neckline. So very quickly you can understand that intent. And so doing tests there, we got a 4% uplift in incremental revenue against more generic models. And then we started to incorporate it into the emails. We've done a lot of work there, and we typically see it's the other alternative that Country Road are using. It's about we get about a 22% uplift in revenue per email send. So everything is personalized, it's all delivered for each customer, not in all emails. I think it's really important that you have those beautiful, gorgeous branded emails, but you can also do those lovely personalized trading emails as well. So there is a place for the brand, and there's a place for the personalization. It's about making sure you're using both to tell the brand story as well as the personalization. But again, that has improved the lifetime value of the customer as well. And then the other really interesting example that we've been working together on, and it's still fairly nascent, but we're doing a lot more work in this, is looking at how we use the data to help us understand size ratios. And this is just looking at tops, and you can see in store, we need more of the core sizes, whereas online we need more of the larger sizes. And it's actually then helping to predict size curves before you even buy it. So it's really working together to try and make sure that that fragmentation is zero, and that as much as possible we can sell through at the right amount, and then we get the right volumes as well. And that obviously is a retailer's dream, right? So you're not it's not about what you buy, but when you decided what to buy, it's here are the size ratios and here's the demand for that. So, and that's where the AI is perfectly placed to work with all that big data. Is there anything you want to add to that, Matt?
I think this is the stuff that I think is most energizing, and such a great example of what I was saying before, which is like, if you're solving for personalization in a disconnected way, the lived experience for the consumer will be disconnected. So, what's the point of being really sophisticated in terms of those recommendations that we're able to give the customer and really tailor the offering through their path to purchase? We don't have the stock. And I think when you guys approached us on this one, it was just such a simultaneously we felt like idiots in a good way. We were like, oh wow, there's a whole world here that we're not even thinking about. But then just found it so incredibly energizing that actually the power of this and what this means for our business, particularly as well when you overlay any sort of sustainability aspirations that your business might have as well. Like, that's a really big part of who we are at CRG. And we're just sort of so energized, not just about the margin and, you know, commercial implications of what Sarah's just touched on, but actually just getting to a world where we're not overproducing stock, you know, anywhere like we are today, as I think, you know, most retailers probably are, sort of relying on old analog sort of methods to solve the problems that we're talking about here.
And the other thing, and I think what's interesting here is with all of this, and I think just touching on your sustainability piece. So one of the things we're working on for one of the brands at Country Road, which is a heritage brand, it's amazing products, gorgeous quality. If someone bought something last year, showing them how they can still wear that item in new ways. So it's not just about when you're looking at outfitting, it's saying, like, we know you bought this heritage sweat last year. We know it's gorgeous. We know you love it. Here's a way of dressing it up. So it's not just sustainability from making sure that you're producing what you will sell and having less waste and less terminal stock. It's also making sure that your customers are really loving and reusing and re-wearing in new ways stuff that they bought previously. I think that's really exciting as well.
Yeah, precisely. Yeah.
And I think this is kind of what we're really excited about. It's done well. It is genuinely transfer. So you've got two flywheels here. On the bottom, you've got this sort of customer-led data, customer-led models where in soon, hopefully, you've got every single customer who lands has this gorgeous, amazing, personalized experience, but it's on brand, it's on message. It's not about selling your best-selling pair of tights. It's here are the things that matter to us as a brand. Here are our brand stories, but here is it in the context of you, Mrs. Customer. And this is the best experience that helps you to look amazing, feel amazing, and be the best version of you. And then helping them to wear their wardrobe better. So you end up with this great loyalty, they spend more, they come back. But so that just gets better and better. But all of that data then feeds back into the buying, the merchandiser. So everybody, they're more informed with the creativity, they're more informed with the size of the buy, the size ratio, so you've got better margins and you can invest more in better quality products. And so you just end up with this amazing business where everything is just, we're just on the tip of the iceberg, but there's so much more to do, which is super, super exciting. And I think this is the time for fashion retailers to genuinely start to embrace this, because those that don't, I just think they won't exist in 5 years' time. So it'd be so dramatic, but I think it is so fundamental to the future of retail.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I sort of echoing sort of the comments we made up front around, like, I do think the right way to think about this is that it is a bit of an existential crisis when you think about how the tectonic shifts across the broader industry are moving. But I think above all, I think, you know, through the journey that we've been on with you guys, Sarah, at Dressipi, and the thought leadership you guys have shown, we're pretty just overwhelmingly energized by the potential of the future. And this sort of this byword that is so often used in a nebulous and diluted kind of manner, like, it's starting to get a really sharp meaning in terms of what it means at CRG. And I think when we look at where we are and where increasingly we understand we need to be, I mean, there's a big gap actually, but I think there's through the journey we've taken the organization on around educating them of the fuller potential here, there's just incredible energy around this topic. And we know that the path ahead will be really challenging, but we're fully bought in to pursuing this as hard and as fast as we can in its fullest sense. But I think it's, you know, if anything, I just wish I'd appreciated the bigger picture that we're sort of speaking about today 3 years ago. So we'd started bringing the organization along the journey a little bit sooner, because I think that future state where we're achieving everything that Sarah described is incredible from so many perspectives that we wish we could get there tomorrow.
Yeah, so that, I suppose, to wrap up, that's why we think it's about really reframing the conversation and rethinking. It's not about buying a bit of personalization tech, chucking it in, having a few widgets. It's about really thinking about what that means for your business. What is it that you want to achieve as a retailer, and then getting all of those steps in place. So getting your data house in order, understanding the experiences that you want to own, that you want to deliver for your customers, and then making sure that all of that data is feeding back into all parts of the business. So you end up with a very, very profitable business with very, very happy customers. So we're very excited. And I think any questions, I am here. Sadly, Matt is not, but I'm going to be here to answer some questions if you have any. So thank you very much indeed. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Sarah!
No, I've changed, obviously, quick change. So I should have worn the exact same things, but I didn't anyway.
Well, you have to personalize your closet now, don't you?
Exactly. Lovely to see you.
It's lovely to see you. We have questions, and one of them is from Joshua Young, and you're using a lot of data to generate personalized recommendations. What do you think about using this information to success customization in a sell then make model?
Absolutely. I think so. We typically work with bigger retailers, but I think that's so. If I look at the things we're looking to do down the supply chain, the easy bit, if you like, the low hanging fruit is the size curves and then the demand. But I think and I think the key thing here is that decomposition of the products into these very specific customer-led attributes, because then you start to understand. So yes, I think then, and actually when you're looking to then design products, we now get products at sketch stage, and you can start to predict whether that's going to be a good seller or not. So yes, I think all of those things absolutely can do. But I think what's really important with fashion is that it is fashion, right? So it's about how you work with those constraints alongside the creative team. So I think the data is a tool set. It's not a panacea. It's a tool set to enable and to give the foresight and to validate the gut instinct of a designer or a buyer. So I think it's about using it in the right context such that you can just deliver a much better business, if that makes sense.
So that makes complete sense, because actually when we first talked about personalization, the example that you gave me is this one. If you bought a winter coat this season, you're probably not going to buy another winter coat this season, and a lot of if we look at a lot of the personalization recommendations actually that you get after you bought the coat, right? The recommender is going to give you another coat.
Yeah, exactly. And some customers do, and I think this is understanding as well how customers, again with fashion, people talk about having lots of data, but actually you might have 5% of your customers who buy a lot from you, but actually most people are just buying once or twice per year. That's it, right? So actually on any individual customer, the data is actually very sparse. So what you're trying to do is put things and put data into the customer journey to learn as much as you can do about their intent and their mission in session. I think that's, so knowing that in terms of your customer base, typically they'll buy one winter coat a year, or so if they've already bought their winter coat, what are they going to go and buy to go with that winter coat? They don't want another winter coat. Or in some cases, you are someone who buys 10 winter coats, in which case show them another coat. But understanding that it's a very different, like, making recommendations for fashion is so completely different to it's not like recommending a film or a book or anything else. It's so completely different. And so the data constructs are different, and then how you apply those need to be applied very differently to the domain as well.
And I love that conversation with Country Road, where actually, it's a mindset to a certain extent, right? So they recognized what they didn't have. And they kind of took ownership of the point that they didn't actually have it, and they had to go through this journey of understanding what they had to do, right?
Yeah, and I think because in many cases, a lot of retailers have tried personalization that comes out of the box, and it doesn't really work, and it doesn't really move the needle, and so I think it takes a while for them. So when we work with a retailer, and suddenly the results are amazing, and you're getting kind of significant incremental revenue uplifts. I think, and then it's suddenly everything's open. Suddenly they see why actually better data equals better models. All of those things make a big difference. So I think, and our journey with Country Road has been very much, it's been baby steps and then iterative. And then as we've been able to see things in the data and see things in the models, then going back to that, we think we can find you some extra EBIT here and some money saving here, and then it's really been working very closely with them to make sure that we can optimize as much as possible for them.
And that part is the most important thing, because we actually still have to make money as brands, right? Yeah. Especially since, as we first talked about this, the sustainability issue that we actually have, it's a balance between, actually dealing with all the inventory that we actually have and being able to sell it off, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, recognizing that in the future we're going to have to be much, much clearer about what we sell to whom and when.
And I think to that point, so no one's saying stop selling. I think this is where like you've got really good merchandisers, really good buyers. They will know, but they just physically do not have the time to trawl through gazillions of bits of data to say, well, actually, what I really want to check is the neckline. They haven't got the time or the manpower. But this is actually where big data is incredibly well suited. So as long as your data sets are consistent and accurate, then it will help you to. So and actually, a buyer will know, but be able to validate their gut so they can buy that more expensive suede shirt because it will sell. So it's those things that make a big difference, I think. And but yes, it's about producing what you will sell and making sure that you're selling everything at a much higher full price sell-through rate. So you end up producing less, but still making much more money and significantly more profit to then reinvest into the process.
And that's actually really key, because what would you say is the first thing, if people don't know where their data is, that's the first thing they have to actually do?
So I think the first thing, I think there's no point buying lots of fancy tech unless your data is clean and consistent. So I think the first thing to do is to take the time. And so interesting, we started with we've got a bunch of amazing stylists, and we sat down with them and we basically spent the time understanding why is it you can dress me better than I can dress myself. And so we tried to understand, it's it's a process, and then being able to apply those tags correctly. So I mean, I can't tell you. So we've been through a long journey, but getting that data piece right first, and then everything's so much easier after that.
Great. So thank you so much for coming on and answering some questions. Thank you so much for your presentation. I really look, we actually have to get all of the houses in order, and there's many houses to get in order in this.
Well, thank you so much for having me as well, and I will extend a big thank you from Matt as well, who is on holiday, lucky him. But thank you very much for having me, and anyone with any questions, please feel free to email me or reach out on LinkedIn.